Hello, and welcome to episode 4 of Ask Coach Cam, where I answer your burning fat loss questions. I hope you're finding a way to beat the heat this week. It's pretty hot, at least it is here in the UK. Any international viewers, let me know how it is where you are. Obviously, tragedy in Germany, so not quite the same weather over there. So yeah, earlier in the week, I asked people for their questions, and today's selection is kind of what we have. If you want, you can ask questions while I'm streaming, and I'll try and get to them at the end. If not, I'll be sure to include them next week. Okay? So without further ado, let's jump in, get to it, and get to some of the questions. So I have a question here from Sam saying, allergies and heat have pooped, I won't include the swear word, all over my ability to work out. What can I do? So first of all, I mean, in a way, this is kind of similar to, I need to lose fat. I keep trying, but it's not really working out. When something stops working out, really what we have to do is go back to the basics and go, okay, let's try something new. Let's try this in tiny steps. Whatever going back to the basics means for you. I'm assuming because allergies and heat are usually associated with outdoors, I'm assuming usually you work out outdoors. So, if we don't want to work out in the heat, what other ways can we find to work out, basically? And part of this is kind of, Ryan Holiday wrote a whole book about it. Basically wrote a whole book about a Marcus Aurelius quote. So it comes from the Stoics. The obstacle is the way. And really what that's all about is how can you turn an obstacle into a genuine, real advantage? So it's not, happy clappy, finding the silver lining or anything like that. It's turning every situation into a genuine advantage for you. In the purest sense of the term, it's about being opportunistic. So what opportunity has been presented to you through this heat? Maybe it's worth, if the workouts in the heat really aren't working for you and you're really struggling to do them, cut that out. Let's use the heat as an opportunity. So what can we do? Maybe there's some swimming that can be done. Perhaps right now is a good time to try some open air swimming or something like that. There's a few different options for you there. You can also, it's hot. Maybe we might consider just slowing down a little bit, and maybe we can do some other activities. Fat loss isn't necessarily all about working out. This is why I don't operate out of a gym, okay? Because there are other ways to increase our activity without necessarily going to the gym and working out. And those activities can and should be fun. So if it's not too much on the allergies, maybe we could go and do something like crazy golf. That's getting out and about. It's getting some steps in. And it's a fun way to do it. You can even take that a step further and maybe go on a pitch and putt course, something like that, or a par 3 course. Crazy golf, maybe it's a good time to try some open air swimming, etc, etc, etc. Slash, maybe it's also a good opportunity for rest. Maybe you've picked up some niggles, picked up some injuries, maybe you got a bit of a duff elbow or whatever it is. And now's a really good time to actually go, okay, you know what? I am going to reel back. I'm going to go for some evening walks because they're really nice. They're nice when it's kind of this hot and it really starts to cool down. Maybe some tea or dinner for Southerners. You can have some tea and then sort of go out after tea, go on some walks, and that can be really nice and pleasant. So it really is about turning the obstacle into an advantage. How does this present an advantage to you? What opportunities are there out there? Sometimes it could be we might have to get a bit creative. Sometimes we might just have to try things instead of being I think a lot of us can get stuck in our own head and basically be our own Debbie Downer and shoot ideas down in our head without actually trying stuff. So maybe it's about going out and trying new things, even if you're not sure if they'll work or you're not sure you'll enjoy it. Just have a think and just try things and just do. And if that doesn't work, do something else. Okay. It's the same principle in agile engineering. We want to fail quickly so that we get to the solution faster. So if we can fail quickly and by trying loads of things, we're probably going to get to an answer rather than sitting at home planning all day and trying to get to and then the solution might not work out for us. Okay. And then we go back and plan for ages again. You're much more likely to get the solution if you just do. So do and try new things. Perhaps swimming is a great exercise. So perhaps stumping and great in this kind of heat, great time to get out. So perhaps it's worth stumping a little bit for either pay individually for a swimming pool or something like that. See if you can find something local. And that's another good place to look for ideas. Just kind of troll Google Maps and have a look at what's around you and how you can increase your activity. And lastly, the only bit of advice I've got is the cold shower. If you want to look into it, there's sort of Wim Hof cold exposure, which is kind of taking it to a whole new level. But cold showers in general, they're great for reducing inflammation. That's kind of what the redness on burns is and all that kind of stuff. We want to so we can reduce some of that inflammation by taking a cold shower. We can take some of the heat out. Obviously, it's a great way to cool us down, and especially if we can kind of drip dry a little bit as well, so that cold water takes some time to evaporate off. We can really get some heat out of our body by taking a cold shower, and with that reducing inflammation. Some of the side effects of a lot of allergies is inflammation around the eyes, around the nose, on the skin, whatever. A cold shower can take some of that out. But when I say cold shower, I don't mean lukewarm shower. I mean actually cold. I mean get it right down there. Maybe not all the way to the bottom, all right? You might not be that sadistic or masochistic. Can never remember which way around they are. Whichever. You don't have to go full sadistic. You can keep it a little bit, but we don't want it lukewarm. We want it actually cold, and we want to get in there and control our breathing. Okay, control our breathing while we're in there. Take some deep breaths in, take some deep breaths out, and lean into that cold shower. To be honest, when it's this hot, I have a cold shower in the morning. Sometimes I'll even have it in the afternoon, and then I'll also do it before I go to bed. So usually it doesn't end up 3 times in a day. Usually it depends what I'm doing, but those are the 3 times I'll take one. And yeah, really good. And according to Wim Hof, good for you generally as well, all year round, that cold exposure. So definitely consider doing that and maybe look up Wim Hof a little bit. Cool. So thank you for that question, Sam. I hope that gives you some sort of direction to go in, something to look in. I'd love to hear what the outcome is. So yeah, get in touch and we'll move on to the next question. So this next question wasn't really a question, it was kind of a post from Ted. So it says, I'm kind of at a loss. For the past few months, I've been regularly going to gym 3 to 4 times a week, doing a good mix of cardio and weights. I've cut down my diet and food intake, but I weigh exactly the same as I did when I started. Okay. Number one, so this is where my engineering background comes in. Number one is no scientist worth their salt, although the media do this quite a lot at the minute. No scientist worth their salt will do a single variant analysis, okay? And that means taking one measurement and drawing a conclusion from it. That's usually not good enough in terms of science to produce a conclusion, okay? So why are you doing it? Why is one measurement good enough for you? It shouldn't be. If anything, you're not a scientist, so you should be taking even more measurements, okay? And that's kind of what we want to do. So we don't just want to measure our weight. We want to measure our waist size. We want to measure our leg size. We want to measure our bicep. We want to measure our hip size, whatever. And to be honest, when it comes to deciding what measurements to take, and the thing is, I'll take these monthly, so it's personally, so it's not something you're doing every week. It's just once a month. You have to take. It's a good idea to take these measurements. But But in deciding which measurements to take, you also have to decide what's meaningful to you. So there's also measurements in getting fitter. So, you know, what's your fastest mile? Every month, do a mile test. What are your lifts like? Every month, do a lift test. You know, do 1 rep max testing. Even once every month might be too much. You might want to do that every 2 or 3 months. Just in general, this is one big thing people don't do in the gym. They don't keep a logbook of their lifts. If you're not keeping a logbook, how do you know you're improving week on week? You don't. The simple answer is you don't. You go off memory, but we always forget, and we always go, I think I was around this last time. Get a damn logbook and write your list down, and you can see them improving, okay? So that's where I'd jump off on that kind of query is we need to take multiple variables in order to assess whether we're progressing or not. Okay, it's impossible to draw a conclusion off weight alone. Generally, in society, we're pretty hyper aware of weight being a problematic unit of measurement. We know that BMI is a problem. You know, a lot of rugby players have really high BMIs but really low body fat, for example. So it's essentially a useless measurement. I'm 5'7". I'm at the lower end of the height spectrum. For me, it doesn't take, like, I can have pretty low body fat but a little bit of muscle mass, and all of a sudden I'm overweight according to the BMI scale. Okay, because it doesn't scale well. And for tall people, I mean, your BMI might look good, but your body fat not so much, because your height is kind of letting you get away, because it's a really basic formula. Again, my engineering background coming in here, a simple formula with no attenuation at the ends of the spectrum is just gonna produce bad results at the ends of the spectrum. So if you're a bit taller, your BMI should maybe be a bit lower than what it's telling you it is. Okay, so we got all those kind of things there, and we know weight, and we know when we start doing weights workouts, we take on more water weight, all those kind of things. It's very, very extremely common for people doing taking up resistance exercise to, if not stay the same weight, to gain weight. Okay, it's very, very common, and often the advice is just, yeah, you're doing fine, your lifts are all going up, you're eating right, so carry on with it. Okay, so that's the measurement side of things. At least that's the measurement of output. We also need to make sure we're measuring input, because the number one key thing for fat loss is kind of, I mean, really it's naff all to do with how much exercise you're doing. You could be working out 10 times a week and not be losing fat, okay? Because it's all to do with being in a caloric deficit, okay? So if we're not taking that measurement of calories in and being specific about it, then we don't know if we're in a caloric deficit, okay? You may have to take estimates for what, the kind of watch trackers are pretty good for estimating how much you burn off in a workout, things like that. I mean, there are a few calorie deficit calculators out there. Really, the calculation you need is kind of your BMR or your sedentary calories burned. For example, for me, if I'm sedentary, my calories burned in a day is 1,950. Okay, then we add on exercise on top of sedentary. Okay, on top of that sedentary calorie value. So, if I do a 300 calorie run, probably something more like 400. Let's say I do a half-hour run. It's around 400 calories. That's going to take my total calorie output to 2,350. Okay, so if I want to be in a caloric deficit of 500 kilocalories, which I'd say is the maximum, the absolute maximum calorie deficit you want to be in, then I need to be consuming around 1,850 if I've got the maths right in my head. Okay, so that's how we create a caloric deficit. And so you can create a caloric deficit by being sedentary. I can be in a caloric deficit by not moving at all, having 1,950 calories, being sedentary, which just means your normal day sat down, and then I could eat 1,450 calories and be in a 500 kilocalorie deficit. Now, I don't recommend being completely sedentary because we know that causes loads of health issues. We know that causes loads of stuff. But in terms of activity, your activity could be a walk. Your activity could be anything, okay? And then our minimum threshold value, because 1,450 calories can be quite tough to stick to, can be quite restrictive. So as well, doing that extra bit of movement allows us to move that scale up a bit, and we can start to eat, 1,700 1,800 kilocalories, something like that. Okay, so we can move that scale up a bit. 2,000 calories would be nice, wouldn't it? So, by the way, ladies, sorry, all this is based on all the values I've used so far is based on me as a male. Okay, yours would be slightly different, being female. But again, that will all come in the online sort of calculators that you can pick up. I'll tell you what, I'll put one that I've used before in the comments. I really should put one on my own website, shouldn't I? That'd be a good idea. So you need to do that calculation. You need to calculate calories. You need to calculate your calories in. Calories is just a unit of energy, okay? So we need to know the energy that's going into our body, the energy that's going out. Through the laws of energy conservation, if our energy out is more than our energy in, we're going to use some of that energy from storage, which is in our fat, and we're going to... and that's how we're going to lose fat over time, okay? It's simple, it's really simple physics. It is a law of physics. We know it to be true, okay? You cannot escape that. Calorie is king, and those energy measurements are what you need to be kind of doing on a day-to-day basis to make sure you lose fat in the long run. So I hope that helps. There are other things, if we're doing that consistently. I should say another thing is, a lot of us, myself included, but it's a very, very common issue, that we work out during the week, we eat healthy during the week, so we're in a caloric deficit in the week, okay? Then we get to the weekend, we get to Friday, we have some beers, we get to Saturday, and we wake up and we have, some massive English breakfast or something like that, and then we get on the beers again on Saturday night, and then we eat the leftover kebab on Sunday morning or whatever, and we've completely blown our calories out of the water. So we feel good that we've had, a really healthy Monday to Friday, and then completely blown it out the water at the weekend. If you're weekly not in a caloric deficit also, so as well as daily, we need to look at it weekly, we need to look at it monthly. If we're not in a caloric deficit over those time periods, guess what? You're not going to lose fat. You lose fat at rest, okay? You lose fat in your sleep. You don't burn it on the treadmill. Nothing like that. You burn fat at rest. When you're moving about, you're using carbohydrates, okay? And you need that's a good time to eat carbohydrates is around when you're working out, because that's what you're going to be using. We burn fat when we're in a caloric deficit at rest. That's the best way to think about it, okay? What else can I say about that? There can also be, with exercising, reward mentality, okay? So we could go on a massive sort of, 8-kilometer walk or something on a Saturday, and we're like, yeah, I did 8 kilometers, that's great, really good. And then what we do is we go to the pub and we immediately consume not only all the calories we've just burnt off, but more calories, having 2 pints and a ploughman's lunch, okay? So there's just no way around it. You need to measure calories in and calories out and be in a caloric deficit. Calorie is king, and there's no escape from that. So that would be where I start. That would be where I start looking. And in terms of measuring calories, the best app I've come across is MyFitnessPal. It's by Under Armour, or it's at least it's sponsored by Under Armour. It's part of their group of apps. And you can scan the barcode on the food you're eating, and it automatically comes up with all the nutrition info. All right, so you don't have to weigh things and all that kind of stuff. If you've eaten half a packet of prawns, it tells you the weight of the prawns. You can just half the packet, scan the barcode in. Jobs are good, okay. And it has, especially very recently in the last year or so, I don't think I've ever found there to be not a food on there, okay, because it's. The foods are put in by the community, okay? So if someone's eaten it before and put it into the app, then it will be there. So, yeah, Yeah, MyFitnessPal is the best way to count calories in. Um, it's worth addressing. I don't think you can get necessarily obsessive about counting calories alone. Okay. I think you should count all your calories because, again, just like science, we need to know an exact measurement. Okay, if we're not putting our coffees in and we're having 2 sugars in our coffee, that can be the difference between being at maintenance and being in a caloric deficit, and that's why we're not losing fat. And because we haven't measured it, we don't know it's there. We can't see the issue. Especially if you're struggling, okay, and you're having this issue where you're not losing fat, we need to see the evidence. We need to look at all the data. We need to collect data, okay? So if anything, especially at the beginning, counting everything is really important. Count that biscuit you snuck, okay? Often we can feel guilty about these things. It's not about guilt. It's not about that. It's about seeing the solution, okay? So, and that's the way we have to think. It's about seeing the solution. And that's why we need to count everything, okay? Where it does become obsessive and where it does become disorderly, okay, is not necessarily counting calories. It's that obsession with continually reducing calories, and then we start to get into anorexia and things like that, okay? So if we've got those kind of issues, counting calories, or if we've had those issues in the past, I should say, then counting calories can start to become a problem, start to become an issue. We might have to do other things like portion control, or start talking to a nutritionist or a dietitian to help us get those answers and help us with portion control, okay? And that can be done for a food diary, things like that. But to be honest, in a way, MyFitnessPal is a food diary. It's a food diary that also counts your calories. You can see exactly what you've eaten. So, anyway, if you're having those kind of issues, that's kind of it's almost a separate point, and you need to talk to a specialist or a PT about that specifically if you think you're at risk of developing anorexia, bulimia, or other eating disorders through counting calories. However, for everyone else, you need to do it. You need to count every calorie, okay? I would weigh food to starting off, because sometimes we might put in a bowl of cereal and the one portion of bowl of cereal on the box is 30 grams. We put in 60. We've just had double the amount of cereal. You'd be surprised how little the portions on the boxes are when you actually pour them on your plate, okay? Or pour them in your bowl. So you kind of do have to measure. There's just no way around it, but that's how you're going to solve the problem, okay? If you're not measuring is just the most important thing. If you're not measuring, then it's hard to see a pattern in the data, and it's hard to see a solution, okay? So I think I've gone on a bit there and gotten a bit passionate about measurement, and gone off on a few tangents. Hopefully that provides a starting point. If you struggle from that point forward, I mean, at least once you've got the data, we can then start to look at patterns and go, okay, some of this stuff really isn't working for you. We need to switch up our strategy, and that's when you switch up your strategy. That's when you go, okay, this cardio isn't working for me, or doing weights every week isn't working for me. I'm going to switch to something else. I'm going to add some things into my routine. Sitting less is to be honest, a really good option, so we can stand more, stand on phone calls, all those kind of things. We know that sitting causes all kinds of issues, but we can start to look at those things after we've got the data and after we've done the measurement. Only then can we see that A, we're not making progress in the first place, and B, that the answer isn't really simple, and it's that we're not putting our coffees in, we're not counting our coffees every day, or we're just not been in a caloric deficit, or we're blowing things out on the weekend, etc., etc., etc. All those common issues. So yeah, don't use a single variant analysis. It's got to be multivariant. You've got to collect the data. No way around it. And that's what a PT will do. And that's why you will give a food diary to a PT, etc., so that they can see where issues might be, and why you might not be getting the results you want to get. And it may just be as simple as, if you're doing if you're doing a good mix of cardio and weights, that you're putting on muscle mass, and it's just going to take time. That's the other thing. You just can't rush things. These things take time. Okay, I lost my first 10 kilos over 6 months. I did it all sustainably. We really don't want to be crash dieting. We don't want to be doing any of those kind of things. They don't work out in the long term. We know that for a fact. Crash dieting and, really reducing our calorie intake, really increasing our activity beyond what we used to, it's just going to lead to us blowing out. I've quoted it before, the activity app Strava. Quitting day is the 19th of January from people's New Year's resolutions on the 1st of January, okay? Just 19 days. That's how long we last when we try and crash diet and shove loads of exercise that we're not used to doing. If we're going to do things sustainably, it's going to take time, and we just need to be patient. But you do need to be measuring everything. Okay? I hope that helps. If you have more questions, Ted, then I'm more than willing to go into more detail and answer it. But hopefully that provides a first step forward. Cool. Well, we're already half an hour in. I do have another question here. And to be honest, I think it's going to be a long answer. So I'm going to leave that question. I'm going to leave it for another week. And we'll just check the comments. Have we got any comments in? None on Facebook. And probably none on YouTube. None on YouTube. Okay. So that's half an hour. We only got through 2 questions today, probably because I rambled quite a lot. But hopefully that provides some way forward and some solutions for you guys out there. Provides at least the first step. And that's all we need. We need that first step, and then we can start refining and working on it. Just keep it simple to start with. Keep it simple. Just measure everything. Keep the exercise simple. Don't overcomplicate it. And then we can start to try new things. Treat ourselves as an experiment. I treat myself as an experiment. I've had whole months where I've done, I generally don't think cardio is the best, especially long steady state cardio. Might not be the best for fat loss, but I didn't want to come to that conclusion without testing it on myself. So I did a whole month of doing long steady state cardio. Okay. And it wasn't particularly useful. Now that's just for me. For someone else, it might be different, and we all have to treat ourselves as different experiments. And as well, if I've been limiting myself by believing cardio isn't the best fat loss method for me without testing it, then I'm kind of an idiot, aren't I? Like, I need to test it. I need to know. So we treat ourselves as an experiment, and we go forward, and we we'll do a month of this, and we'll go and we'll take all the measurements, and then we'll go, okay, this didn't really work out, and I was pretty hot on it and everything like that. Didn't really work out. Okay, I'm not going to do as much running anymore. Still going to keep it in because I need to keep my cardio fitness up. And I've gained a lot of cardio fitness, so I'd like to keep some of it. Okay, so we'll go. I'll reduce that, and I'll pick up my weights workouts or whatever it may be. I've tried a few things. For a month, I went wasn't vegan. I went gluten free and dairy free to see if it made a difference. For me, didn't make a difference, but we all have different guts. We all have different gut health, okay? We all have different things that affect our guts. We all have different intolerances, okay? You're an experiment. Experiment on yourself. And again, to bring science back into it all, if we don't strictly set the parameters of the experiment and we don't stick to the experiment, we cannot trust the result, okay? So the experiment needs to be at least 90% plus for real. If we've had a couple of days where we've kind of messed up a bit, it's probably not going to affect 30 days or whatever. So but we need a reasonable test. We can't just do 5 days in the week and not the weekends, okay? We need a good baseline to draw some actual results, to draw some actual conclusions. Okay, so treat yourself as an experiment. We've all kind of got used to it this year with COVID, with the phrase "follow the science." Okay, you need to become a little bit of a scientist, at least in mentality. Okay, whereby, if we don't measure things, if we don't yeah, if we do a single variant analysis, that's not useful enough. We need to measure different things. We need to analyze different results, all that kind of stuff. Okay. So I guess my general piece of advice this week is to think a little bit more like a scientist, or an engineer rather, because I'm an engineer historically. Okay. So thank you everyone for your questions this week. To that person who asked the last question, sorry I didn't get to your question. I'll answer it next week. And that's all for today. So don't forget to share this with your friends or in any groups. Make sure you subscribe, hit any notification bells, or you can head over to the website www.the1percentway.com to subscribe over there. Good luck with your fat loss journeys, and I'll catch you same time, same place next week. Take care now.